As children looking out in the dark and seeing masked men with guns holding our parents outside, it was a very frightening experience. I'm from the townland of Cornona, which is just between Crossmaglen and the border. Roughly translated, I think it means rocks and bogs, and that would be the nature of the land that my parents farmed. I come from a small holding. We come from a dairy farm, and there are 4 children in our family, all of whom took a very active part in farming. So despite the fact that we had 1 boy and 3 girls in the family, the girls did as much work as the boy in terms of farming, and then of course having to do the housework as well. So I suppose from a very early age we would have had a very strong sense of community and being involved in the local community from a farming perspective. The reputation of South Armagh and Crossmaglen is well known, and I suppose for someone who's from the area and who cares passionately about what, I suppose in some respects, whether we like it or not, you do care what people think. And what we did in mid-1980s was to look to see how we could do work locally ourselves. That was to tell good news stories about our local area, and we were very keen to do that, and we had local contributors, and you can imagine at that stage we were all labelled with the usual tags of bandit country, killing fields of South Armagh and other such titles which really didn't fit what we thought of it ourselves as being. My father was involved with the SDLP, and that was a difficult place to be, particularly as children, because we were somewhat isolated in the local community because our family had a particular view on things, which was around non-violence, but very strongly based on social justice and a very humanitarian approach to things. The sense was that if you weren't within that political circle, so to speak, that you were on the outside, and it just meant that whenever there were tractors to be used for events, that it was invariably your tractor that would be taken, and it was. And we had a number of times whenever we had hijackings and tractors taken or cars taken, and I suppose that was something that you just got used to and dealt with. There were times whenever you would be afraid, and particularly one time whenever the IRA had reason to come and tell my parents that they weren't supposed to be doing something, or speaking out as they were. As children looking out in the dark and seeing masked men with guns holding our parents outside, it was a very frightening experience. That was one point where it was very frightening. After that, nothing was really, we didn't really, tractors and cars and stuff being hijacked, it was way of life. But it was only whenever it came up close and personal, whenever you thought your parents were going to be killed, that's when it was frightening. It made it difficult to be friends with your neighbours at times. And one particular guy who I think held me hostage, or not held the family hostage at one stage. And it's only recently that whenever there was a cow calving one day at home and I was stuck, and there he was, and I said to him, "Can you help me?" And for me, I don't know if he realised the significance of that, but for me that was a huge step to take, to ask for help. And he just helped, and he was a star. He saved the calf. And it's things like that, I suppose, at that very human level where you think, we're beyond that now and we need to get on with it. And it was for me personally, it was a milestone. Right, I've moved on from that. And all that hurt and that anger and wanting to have a good conversation with him, it didn't need to take place because he helped me. Well, another incident that will always stay with me was, as I was saying, we're farming people. We're involved, have silage, and a number of the fields are kept for that purpose. But it was coming up to the first cut of silage, so it was around April, May time, and the soldiers and policemen on the usual foot patrols going through our local fields up on the hill, and invariably they'd cut wires or the barbed wire over the fence, which was an awful nuisance because it meant that cattle would break out into the fields and eat the grass that was being saved for the silage. But on one day, an explosion went off, and I think it was either two policemen and a soldier were on the ditch crossing over when a bomb went off. And of course the concern was, after the immediate concern about people being killed, they had to clean up, because we had to clean the stones from the ditch that were in the grass, because then the silage harvester couldn't go in the field. So we got the all clear to do that. And I suppose, like, whenever you think about it, it's one of those things where you think, here we were, people were killed here, and here we are trying to go about our business afterwards. And the dilemma of that, where you're in a field cleaning up stones that have been scattered all over, the stones that are big enough that would ruin the machinery. My mother and I were rolling a big stone off one particular patch, and we came upon the remains of small remains of a person. And as I suppose it's whenever you come upon something like that it really affects you, and you think human beings were killed here. Just as one of those things where that stays with you. As I suppose as a mother myself now, I know if that happened to my child and me, I'd be in bits over it. We just said a prayer, and for me that was really the right thing to do. It was hard, and it even comes back at me nowadays, and it's just one of those things where you have to get on with it. But hopefully that did some good. But it just brings home to you again the ordinariness of farming and the times that we were in, and having to get on with it, and how you cope with that. But I think having people like my mother, who is extraordinary. We're good people. We've achieved a lot. We have a sense of confidence in our past, because we have a very strong sense of culture, identity that comes from that, and our environment is lovely. We've got the Ring of Gullion, which is designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty, and certainly as someone who lives in and works in the area, seeing strangers coming into the area is now something that we welcome, whereas in the past we would have been very suspicious of that, because always being on the alert as a child stays with you. I think that grassroots feeling that we have, and that sense of community and self-help, while it's gone in a number of areas, and we see that with, as we've become a more selfish society, that hasn't disappeared in South Armagh. It's very strong, and you always know that you can rely on people, and that they'll be there for you. One of the points I'd like to highlight would be the role of women in all of this, and throughout how they have influenced me, and more so than anybody else have been two women. My mother, who would have been a very strong believer in social justice, a strong believer in peace, but getting on with it at the same time. And the other woman would be Sister Mark Hollywood, who was our school principal in Newry, who instilled in a number of us girls the importance of being resilient and looking for solutions and getting on with it. And I suppose that was highlighted around the time of the hunger strikes, whenever we were doing our exams in school, our A-levels, and where we had the communication was particularly bad, and you didn't know how you were going to get to school, whether you were going to get to school or not. And every day during that time, and we didn't have telephones, and every day during that time, we'd get a lift to the block in Camla, and she'd be there waiting with a minibus to take us in to do our exams, and taking us back to whatever the block was, whether that was a big tree across the road or indeed a burning bus at that time, which was. And all we were, I look back on it now, we were just thinking about our exams and how we'd get on with them and all of the rest. And the bigger picture of people dying in Longkesh just wasn't really an issue for us. And I suppose when you look back on that, it's something that you think, it was just something that I'm not that proud of. I just feel that there were people dying. There was me. All I was worried about was doing my exams. Yeah. But my point is that, from the perspective of a young woman at that time, we had such good role models in other women who will never be, lauded for that. But it's important that they know that they are important.